Welcome everybody, Chris Petrie here. Thanks so much for coming by. Just wanted to show you the finished compositions that we're going to be working on here. First one we did was a beautiful summer sky with like a light blue, kind of with some little touch of green in there for that beautiful sort of like Viridian green, phthalo green kind of tint to the blue sky, kind of a summery sky, some white clouds. We show you how to do some beautiful white clouds with the palette knife, and then we smooth them out with our fan brush. Do a little bit of land here at the bottom, some rolling hills and beautiful distant mountains here, and then we did a little close-up of some trees and bushes and things to kind of, I was kind of just having a fun time here doing using my pencil and just scratching in some, tree limbs and things like that for this little small tree on the side here. But that is just a really fun composition you're going to have a great time working on. And then this one here too, great. This is something very different, right? This is a real dark sunset or sunrise type of composition. We put in some really beautiful dark blues and reds and oranges as we go here. And then we have some ocean water here and some waves and some of the light kind of in the mysterious light in the painting kind of glistening across the ocean. And then we have a sailboat here, and we kind of show you how to create a simple sailboat with your brush, a flat brush. You could just do that real quickly. I show the basic steps to just create a quick, simple sailboat here on the ocean that gives you the real final authoritative brush strokes on your ocean that make sure people, if you're just doing this for yourself, or if you create this for a friend or for something on your wall, if you're going to be painting and putting this up on the wall in your house, in your home, you see that sailboat right there, it's the ocean. You don't have to, there's no question about that. And we also show, this is really what's exciting. I show you that if you're in the middle of a painting and you have an issue, a problem or something like that, here in this painting, when we did this composition, you'll see, of course, when you keep watching along in the video, you'll see that we did have a bit of an issue here. I created a setting sun on the ocean, and it didn't look so good. It wasn't coming together the way I thought it should. So the next thing we did was we just simply took our palette knife, scraped off the paint, and then we just made some beautiful ocean right across the whole painting and solved the problem right away. So when you're doing compositions like this, you'll learn a lot about painting. You'll build a lot of new skills and have a lot of new tools to work with when you're painting in oils as well. Again, it's so much fun when you're doing compositions, and we tape off our paintings so you can have a nice border around your compositions so you can save them, frame them, save them for just future reference if you want to, and we'll talk about that as we go along in the video. But thanks so much for coming by, and we're going to be right back, and we'll get started on our first composition here, the beautiful summer sky. All right, hi, this is Chris Petrie. Welcome everybody. We're going to have some fun with oil paints. We're going to create a couple sky compositions here. So skies are usually like if you're doing anything, landscapes, seascapes, city scenes, the only time you really don't paint a sky in, much of the time would be like if you're doing still life or indoor paintings, so interior paintings of interiors of rooms, buildings, maybe you're doing still life where you're doing like a table and a vase and some flowers, things like that. But most of the time, I know oil painters, they're a lot of times they're really always interested in doing quite a bit of the landscapes, seascapes type paintings. So that's why we're going to cover this. It's good practice, good. It's good for our building our skills with painting skies and different methods and techniques doing that. So let's go with that idea of skies are always a great fun thing to do, even if you just want to have some fun with your paints for like 20 minutes, half an hour, and you don't have all the time to maybe do a complete painting, and you just want to have fun with the paints a little bit and mix some colors and use your brushes and so forth and palette knife, whatever you have. Let's consider that something like we're doing here. So it's always a good time to pick up the brushes and paints, and we'll get started. So I always just mention in the beginning, I use Winsor & Newton Artisan line. So it's Winsor & Newton brand water mixable oil paint, and it's called Artisan is the line. And in the comments section below, you'll see I have the paints, so you can click on links and go to Amazon and check out the different prices they have for different sets. They have like a dozen paint tube sets, and then they maybe have like individual tubes for sale, whatever it is. You'll check that out on Amazon. But or in your local art store. If you go to your local art store, I'm sure they would have this brand, Winsor Newton Artisan line of water mixable oil colors. I'm pretty sure all the places nearby where I live carry the Artisan line of Winsor Newton oil paint, which is again water mixable. You clean up with soap and water, and there's no problems after that. It's just simple. So we'll get some colors out on our wax paper here. So we have some. It's called palette paper. It's just basically like a waxy paper, and you just squeeze out your colors on there, and then you mix right on top of that palette paper, and then you can always take it and fold it up and put it in a baggie. If you want to do some touch-ups on one of your paintings or your compositions, you can just save it for a week or two, and then if you want to do some touch-ups, you just maybe label the Ziploc baggie like what painting it was, like Sky Washes, and you put a date on it or something like that. So you can keep organized with your paint, so you don't have to always re-squeeze out new tube paint. You can always fold this up a little bit, your wax paper. You take your wax paper, fold it up, and put it in a Ziploc baggie. And then you can just save it. It won't dry out. It'll stay fine if you leave it in a Ziploc bag. And then you put that, again, just set it to the side somewhere, and then you can go back and use the same colors. You'll have all the colors that are already mixed right on your wax paper. So you can just go right in, open up your wax paper, tape it down to your table or wherever you like to work, and then you just pick up again and grab your brushes, and you can start going right back into the same composition or painting, and you'll have all your same colors right there, ready to just blend right into your painting or your composition that you worked on. So that's great. That's what I like to do sometimes. So we put out some white, of course, because we use usually white quite a bit. And then if we need more white, we can just simply, squeeze out some more if we need. But that seems like a good amount there. I think what we'll always usually do, you'll always see me on this channel here when you're following along. And it's, again, great to have you here. Thanks for coming by. And I know quite a few of you are sort of becoming regulars, and you come in and watch the videos. And it's more of like we're having fun just, doing compositions, getting used to the oil medium. So I'll take my paint tube and but yellow ochre is like a beautiful primer color for our canvas. So we're going to prime our canvas here, and it's a hardboard canvas. So you can buy these hardboards. Again, I have the links down below in Amazon, or you can at your local art store. You can pick them up. They have like usually a pack of 10. And I took this hardboard and just taped it down to my table, and I used artist tape to just make divisions so that we have two separate compositions here for our skies. We're going to do the really interesting blue sky with some white clouds, and then we'll do this like a sunset type composition of a sky glazing with some really beautiful sunset type colors, oranges, reds, some purples, blues. We'll get into it and see what we come up with. It's kind of experimental too. It's what's fun about painting and art. You can kind of experiment and have fun as you go. So, let's just start out here anyway, getting some glazing here. We're going to prime the canvas here. You can take a little bit of water. Take a little bit of water, a little bit of paint, and get that golden yellow ochre color in there. And what's actually great about yellow ochre is it's the color of light, sunlight. Okay, now we can do that just to get a coating on there. And then from there we could take, I usually have some t-shirts and things and rags around the house. I save them, and then I cut them down, make them smaller. And once you prime it, you can just simply lift up some of the heavier paint and just get, and then you have your beautiful yellow ochre glazing on there. Okay, and then since we're doing a sky, we could certainly, maybe toward the bottom of the sky, we'll maybe make an indication of some hills, maybe some mountains, just a little tiny bit. This way it doesn't feel like our composition doesn't have like an anchor to it, or it's not, settled down, kind of feeling, solid and anchored down. That's the key. Sometimes if we just paint something in the middle of the canvas, it'll seem like it's just floating off into space or whatever. If you make a little bit of some land or some mountains at the bottom of your painting, if you're doing sky washes anyway for our compositions here, we'll just put a little bit of land at the bottom, maybe some hills, and we'll figure out what colors we use for those later. Maybe we'll make some green hills here, some green grass and gold colors. And so we're really moving along nicely here. We kind of, I think what I'd like to do is, I'm going to go with some cerulean blue next. So we'll squeeze out some cerulean blue. That's a good sky color. And I think I'll also, and we'll keep this kind of simple. We're not going to get too complicated with our colors. And then we'll go with some phthalo green over here. Just a little bit of phthalo green, very strong color. A little tiny bit of phthalo green goes a long way, so I just put a little bit out there on the canvas. And I think what we'll do is maybe we'll use the palette knife. I think what we'll do is we'll use the palette knife for some clouds. So let's do that. Let's use the palette knife for the clouds, but we're going to start with, we'll use the same brush we did for our glazing. Maybe we'll pick up yeah, let's use this one. It covers a lot of area pretty well, pretty quickly. So we rinse off our brush just to get a little bit of that yellow ochre glazing cleaned off the brush. Then we take some paper towel, dry off a little bit of the water. And then what we'll do is we'll pick up some white, blue, a little bit of phthalo, green, a little more white. Now, what I always like to mention is, and many of you probably know this because we've talked about it a lot on my channel, and maybe you're watching other channels. I'm always thinking you're always searching around on YouTube and checking out other channels and things like that. But, you know, usually with oils, you're working thinner to thicker paint. So when you first start out, like we did here with our first priming glaze over the our hardboard here, our hardboard canvas, cotton canvas, hardboard. We went with that super thin yellow ochre to just glaze it a little bit, right? And then we also took a little bit of the paint off with some, like a rag, just so that we have a super thin, barely anything on there. Just the canvas is kind of coated with a very light glazing. Now this next bit of paint, this is going to be the sky color. And then usually skies are a little darker up top, and they get lighter as they go toward the bottom. So that's what we're going to kind of do. And I would suggest not painting every single bit of the canvas here. Let some of that golden sunlight color shine through. So the key is not to over paint it and over brush, you know, like too many brush strokes might not give us the same effect we want. We want to maybe have a little bit of that golden color shining through the blue. Okay, so now we have that there. And then once you have your glazing on there, you can, of the blue, you can maybe work parallel with your brush, parallel strokes. More convincing for a sky that you're going to have brush strokes going this way. So that's where you can get it on any old way you want first, but then as you're finishing up your sky glazing over here on top of this canvas, maybe you're going to do that nice parallel strokes, which are really good. And we go right down to the bottom of the sky where it meets the hills. And again, we can do that. And we're going to add some clouds too. So here we go. And then I had some of that charcoal, so I just used some charcoal. These are charcoal sticks you can get online or in the art store, and they're fine. If you put a little mark on your paper to kind of, hash in areas that you're going to want to paint, maybe a building, a hills, some mountains, whatever it is, you use a little bit of this, and it's no problem. It winds up just blending right into the paint, and you never see it at all. So, not a problem there. You can also use a lead pencil if you want, something like this. You can just do the same thing with a lead pencil. And then here we have it. A nice, beautiful, powdery blue, sky blue color. Now we're going to add some clouds to it. So I'll take my brush here. I'll rinse this off a little bit. I think we'll use our palette knife, though, next. Let's get used to using the palette knife a little bit. I think it's real important if you have lots of things you practice, and then you'll always have some different ideas when you're working. So you won't feel like you're kind of stuck with just one thing. Like, oh, I only use brushes. Well, let's practice with some palette knives here. And there's tons of these you can find, again, online and in the art stores. They have all shapes and sizes. I like the ones that are thin, very thin like this. So you can see how that's very thin and kind of flexible. That's the kind of palette knife I like to use. And I have another one like this, just a little larger. But this is all I really find I need, nice and light, flexible. And then we'll take some of this white, maybe a little bit of yellow ochre in there too, for that white to make the clouds. Just to give those clouds a little, and then also too, maybe a little bit of the blue. So we'll have some blue and some yellow in that white paint we're mixing out here now. Now this is where we talked about going a little bit thicker. Now we're going to use the palette knife, and if you could see that, how the palette knife has that thick paint on there, that's going to be our clouds. And then we can do some, get it on the canvas there. Just kind of put it on. And then just, well, let's move our water bucket here a little bit. I don't want to knock that over. I'll put that up there. Hope you don't mind that I move my water bucket a little bit here. I want to try to get the clouds to flow like this across. So that's why I don't like to put anything in the way when I'm working. So it's always good to remember, if you can, when you're working on your canvas and you're painting, you want to have all the area around free and open so that you can have your beautiful movement of your hand and your arm as you go to make clouds or whatever type of waves of the ocean, whatever it is. You want room to be able to sweep across and go off of your canvas so that you can basically work the whole canvas area, and you won't be bumping into things, so you don't want to have anything kind of in the way. I do put the water bucket here just so you kind of see what I'm doing with my water bucket, but I did move it out of the way just because I need to have this area to and then you can smooth it out a little bit with your knife like that. And then what we'll do next is we'll just be very aware that as we go into the distance with our clouds, they become smaller in like this. So the clouds are larger up top and then they get smaller as they go in the distance. Get that little bit of that roll of paint on the edge of the palette knife like that. And then you just take your palette knife and you kind of angle it so that you just get a little tiny bit of the paint right there. Oh, that looks so good. And that's the way clouds really look. If you look in the sky when you're out there, you're on a beautiful day out, maybe traveling or something, and you're looking around and you're doing some sightseeing or going to some places where there's all kinds of interesting roadside farm stands and cool stuff like that. You'll notice that's how the sky is. The clouds get very thin in the distance because they're way far away. And then when you look up right by where you're standing, those are the bigger clouds. They're up here. Like that. And that's our clouds. Now what we do is I'll rinse off my brush, my actually palette knife here. We'll just clean up the palette knife a little bit. I think we're kind of good with our palette knife here. We have our clouds in. Now what we could do is we could take our fan brush and we can certainly blend these clouds a little bit to make them a little softer looking. You can kind of see they're a little bit hard edged on a lot of spots here and there. So let's just soften them up a little bit, and let's do the same thing. I'll rinse off this a little bit and get some water on there, and then dry off the water on a paper towel just so the excess water comes off. And then I'm left with a damp brush here. And then again, you can just wisp your brush across the canvas ever so slightly. Just like that. And you blend those clouds in very, very softly. And then maybe after you work on the ones up top here, then you rinse off your brush again. Just to get some of that paint off, dry off the brush on a paper towel or a rag or whatever you have. Take off the water. So now it's just a damp brush again. And then you do the same thing down here with these clouds. And you just gently go across there. Kind of blend that in. And what it does is it looks so good. It really is awesome. It really gives you the feel for the clouds. And you can sometimes do like you can kind of, get a little sway in the brush like that. But I think that looks pretty good. And maybe up here I'll do a little blending, a little more like that. You can go in and blend a few spots if you think there's way too much clouds. Maybe you made the clouds too thick or something. Well, then you can experiment. You can always take your paper towel too and lift up a little bit, blot up a little bit of the paint. So if you ever think you have too much paint on there, no big deal. Look at that, I can lift some up. So right away you can change it, whether you want thicker clouds or if you want some thinner, lighter, wispier clouds. So you can just change it up, just like we did now. Just like that. If you wanted to and you wanted to make it a hazy day out, easy to make it a hazy day. You just take the brush, rinse off the paint, take the paint off the brush and the water off the brush so that the brush is just damp and clean. And then you could just really go across the whole, really lightly across the whole canvas like this. And just blend in all that color so that it almost looks like a hazy day where there's like lots of clouds and some sun shining through here and there, but mostly kind of that milky white sky. So you can kind of create all kinds of interesting effects with your skies. But I think this is really good right now. We have some beautiful light blue, powdery blue sky, some white clouds in there drifting across the sky, some really thin, smaller, thinner clouds in the distance to give us that feel of the distance in the painting, three-dimensional quality. The bigger clouds are up top, and then as the clouds go into the distance, they're smaller and thinner. And we have this really coming together really nicely. Now maybe what we'll do is we'll put a little bit of foreground in here, and we're going to be finished. So why not use the same colors we have? And we'll change out our water on the next composition, but right now I think we have enough interesting information. And okay, so I'll dry off this brush. I just rinsed it off to get the brush damp, and we'll make some foreground color for down here. Why not stick with the same colors we used? Let's not change and add anything new. We'll make the hills kind of a green, phthalo green with yellow ochre. Makes a really nice green. Some blue in there too. So if you want to get a little darker tone for some shadows maybe. Some of the blue, cerulean blue. And then the phthalo green here. and then yellow ochre. So I think we have some really good, nice colors to work with. And let's get the hills in here. And again, this is not a, we're doing a composition here, so we're not trying to make a award-winning painting. But you never know. You might paint one of these paintings and it'll look so great. You're going to frame it, put it on the wall, give it as a gift. You never know. Have fun with your artwork. Enjoy. You can mix up some colors here. Maybe sometimes if you see if your colors look like they're just kind of staying, like if you're not getting enough variation of color when you're painting on your canvas, just scoop up some color, somewhere else and get something in there to make it look interesting. Like that. So you saw how I went and grabbed some gold, some yellow ochre, when I think it was just looking too boring looking. And then over here, the same thing. Maybe I'll go with some blue and green, a little darker over here. Like that. And maybe what we're kind of the effect we're looking for here maybe is maybe some tree effects over here. A little bit there, here and there. And bushes maybe. And then as we go over here in the distance, it's further away. So we're having a feeling of we're looking at the scene and we have some interesting tree shapes over here. We could scratch in a couple branches. Just a couple. A couple more branches over here and some tree limbs. Like that. So we have some more feeling of some woods here. So there's some woods and some trees. And then as we go into the distance over here, it becomes further away here. So now we have some very far distant hills. And there we have it. A beautiful sky wash like we set out to do. Powdery blue sky, summer sky, white clouds drifting across the scene. We experimented with some thicker white clouds with the palette knife, and then we kind of softened some clouds out with our fan brush here. What a wonderful, fun thing to do, right? Composition, oils, good time. We're not fussing over things too much. And again, we're not going to be painting here for hours and hours. We're just going to maybe paint for the next, 15, 20 minutes. You could take the fan brush too and do a little lighter tree type shapes, tree tops. I wouldn't go too much though. I wouldn't, sometimes just a little bit of, just a little touch up here and there, a little bit of some, like this, is all you need, and that's it. And again, over here, we're going to look for less detail. That's in the further, far out distance that way. Perfect. All right, so we're going to take a quick break. I'm going to change out my water. For my water container here, it's all, full of white paint, especially we used a lot of white and blue. So let's change out our water bucket, take a quick break, 5-10 minutes, and we'll come right back and we'll start working on our sunset sky. And I think you're really going to like this. The sunset sky is so much fun, and we'll get to that in just a second. So we'll just take a quick break and be right back. Okay, so we're back and we're going to do some sunset compositions next here. Let's see. Let's do the same thing we did before. We'll take our larger square brush here and we'll just get some of that gold and yellow ochre. Just get some of that on there. And the old way works. So we have it just covered, the canvas covered. And I always make sure I cover right up to the line of the tape. And this artist tape is great if you're doing compositions, because when you peel it off, you'll see the composition looks so much better. It's almost as if you've framed it, and it gives you a much better feeling of what the composition would look like if it was in a frame. So, all right, so we have that there, and then why not? Let's take our. And again, most of why we use the rag here is just to take off that excess paint, because we're going thin paint to thicker paint. So if you can keep that first glazing super thin, and if you wanted to do it ahead of time, like if you wanted to take a couple of your panels, your hardboard canvas panels, prime them with some yellow ochre like this ahead of time, let them dry for a few days or so. And then when you go to paint on them, then you're even further ahead in the process of making sure your lighter coat, your lighter primer underneath your painting is going to be already dry, so it won't give you any kind of difficulty as far as there being like a little bit of wet paint underneath your subsequent washes as you're going, your subsequent glazings of paint, oil paint. But here it's fine. We like to mix our paints while we're doing our compositions and our paintings. We like to mix the colors a little bit, so it's nice. Like in the sky wash, we mixed a little bit of that golden color into our blue sky, so it definitely looks a lot better with that kind of golden soft paint underneath the sky as we're mixing it, and it blends into the blue a little bit. It gives it more of a feeling of warmth in the sky. Even though it's a cool blue color for the sky, you still get some warmth going in there. And so let's kind of take the same idea here with our colors. We have white up here, and I think we're not going to use as much white in this, so we'll have enough there, I think, of the white paint here. Then we're going to go with some cadmium red. And we want some French ultramarine blue for our sky up top. So I'll take the French ultramarine blue, and we'll get some French ultramarine blue there. And I'm just being mindful just to keep the colors, somewhat spread apart a little bit so that we don't have them too close and then they start mixing together. We want to kind of keep the colors spaced a little bit between each other, so we'll have some of that. We still have some blue up here, cerulean blue, and some phthalo green if we need some of that. So we'll have some of that up there. And also yellow ochre. So French ultramarine blue, cadmium red, and I would say we would need, I think, a little bit of alizarin crimson. So I'll put some alizarin crimson there. And I also think we would like some lemon yellow. And again, these are all the Winsor Newton Artisan line of water mixed with oil colors. And so I'll put the lemon yellow, I'll put that over here maybe. Like that. And that should be fine. Plenty of warm sunset colors here. So I know when I'm going to do the sunset colors, I'll have my paper towels here just to dry off my brush a little bit if I need. French ultramarine blue and cadmium red. Okay, so the sky will be darker up top. And I'm not being worried about it. I'm going to get some good, strong, straight French ultramarine blue right on the top of the canvas there. And again, you can mix it in and then do like a final parallel type of brush strokes for that sky feel. So, but this is the kind of the key now. We're getting that dark under painting there thin. And then we'll go in and we're going to get our alizarin crimson and cadmium red and just start putting that in a little bit here just to mix that in and down. So we'll mix it up a little bit into the darker and then start to mix it down in here a little bit like that. So you can kind of see how we're just having fun with this, getting our dark French ultramarine blue at the top of the sky, and then we start to work in some alizarin crimson and cadmium red underneath that blue, going toward the bottom of the painting. And I think we'll do the same thing here. I think we will just sort of make a note for ourselves, like to leave a little bit of maybe some land here. Maybe this is a beach, or this could be some water along the bottom. So let's just keep that in mind. We want to have a little bit of land to kind of keep the composition feeling like it's weighted down and secure. Okay, so now we're going to go in with some more red, cadmium red, and then some yellow. We'll start to mix some yellow in there too. Maybe a little bit of a yellowy orange color. And then we add that yellow in there with the red. So now we're making an orange basically, like this. And then you could take some of that yellow and orange and put a little bit in the clouds, or in this upper sky, a little bit of the yellow and the orange, just so that it kind of blends in and you see a little bit of the colors mixing throughout the whole composition. But now here we're at the area we're getting close to the water. We'll leave some of that yellow ochre, just the priming of the canvas. We can leave that just like that. Then we can go in again with some blue, and this might be the ocean along the bottom. We're going to make a white sun setting here in the center of the composition at the bottom here. So I'm going to leave the darker blue over here on the edges for the water, and a little bit of the red too mixed in there with that blue. I'm just taking what's up here and putting it down here where the water is. So I'm just pretending that this is the water line here of the ocean. Could be a lake too. Perfect. Okay, so there we have a beautiful sunset sky. We have some ocean, and then like what we'll do is we'll have some really enjoyable fun putting in some effects of the sunlight. Maybe it's a sun setting or sun rising, and we'll take some white and mix that up here with some of the orange. So we want to make sure that the white has quite a bit of some good orange in there. Give it that, and we might just make the then we take our brush and we make sure our brush is really, really dry, completely take all the water out of there, out of your brush, dry it off, and then we'll get the yellow. We'll need to put out a little more. Well, let's use the white. Let's use the white here. We'll see if we can make a white sun like this. Perfect. There we go. And then a little bit of white paint blended in with the yellow and the orange and the red. And I'm just kind of getting that more of that feel of the white sunlight there along with the sun, and maybe some of those bits of sunlight there across the water. And again, it's just a fun composition. No need to worry about perfection here. Maybe a couple of clouds here in the distance. You could even take the sun and make it a red, cadmium red. A little bit of yellow ochre in there. And then if you think to yourself, well, that sunset doesn't look so great, that's not a problem. You can always, you could take our brush that we started with to do the glazing, and we could just take some more blue, and like a purpley blue, like a French ultramarine blue, red, cadmium red, alizarin crimson. And we can just raise up the you can always use the knife here to scrape up some things. Like if you have a little bit too much paint and you just want to scrape up some paint, use your palette knife, scrape up some paint. Like that. And then again, mix up some more paint. Maybe we're going to make a darker foreground like this. Okay, that could be the darker ocean there. And again, we're just enjoying the process. It's always fun to, if you have a problem with your painting, to go in and just have a good time and just maybe change something around. Just say, you know what, I'm going to change it. And then like we did, we just scraped off the paint and maybe made like an ocean water, and we forgot about the sun, the setting sun there, because that didn't come out so good. I don't think it was looking good from my perspective. So if I'm having a problem in a painting and I can just sort of adjust my painting, I'll do that. And that's exactly what I did. I just said, I'm not happy with that sun effect. It didn't look so great for whatever reason. No big deal. I scrape off some of that paint with my palette knife like that, scrape off the paint like that. And then I go back in and just go over with that darker ocean color like so. And then we can go in and even take some little bit of the yellow ochre and white, and maybe just make a couple of waves and things like this. You could do some like that to make it feel like the ocean with some of that swaying effect like this. A little bit of like tapping on the water with some yellow ochre and white, and that gives you that kind of some sparkles light, just in a few spots here and there. Some waves. You could put in a sailboat if you want. I'll rinse off my brush. We'll put in a sailboat maybe. Dry off the brush really well. I take the brush and kind of pinch it like this, and then kind of move the brush back and forth just so I make sure I squeeze out all the water and paint as much as I can to get it nice and dry like that. And then we can come over here and get some more French ultramarine blue and red, cadmium red and alizarin crimson. And then now we have a nice point on this brush here with that thicker paint. And then we can certainly make we could do a sailboat here. And there we have it. A bit of a sailboat. We use the chiseled edge of the brush to make those few lines, right? A vertical line like this, which is the very, very, very point of the brush. It's kind of hard to see here sometimes with the camera. But if we have the brush like this, and then we take it and we kind of get the brushes nice and splayed out like that, and then we take it and just top down. We can do the mast of a sailboat like that, and then maybe over here do the same thing, and then just swing it in a little bit, and you have a couple lines, rigging lines, and then a quick little like this. And that's a sailboat quickly with just, using the chiseled point edge of your flat brush. And we can put that right in our painting here. Gives it a little more interesting. Indications that we now know we're on a sea here. There's some sea. And we have some water, waves, choppy waves. And we have a nice sunset or sunrise. And we're happy. Happy campers. All right, so let's next thing I like to do is just really let's peel off the tape. This is the perfect way to kind of see our paintings isolated, our compositions. So I'll maybe move the palette paper over just a little bit so we have a little more. Okay, so I'll move that over just a touch like that. And then we'll peel off the tape. And this is really, I hope everyone will do this. And even sometimes if it's not perfect and some paint leaks under your tape, that's not a big deal. You'll still get the effect of what you're looking for. And as you can see, it really does frame it out for us. So we have a beautiful look at our compositions we've just completed. We've had fun. We've enjoyed the colors, the mixes, the techniques of how we got this completed. And I'm hoping you're going to have fun with this, enjoy. We're going to see you on the next video. And again, we're going to do a lot of compositions like this going forward. I think it's the best way to learn how to paint is just by isolating certain things, like let's say skies. If you do a whole bunch of sky compositions, anytime you go in to do a painting here, from now on, you're already going to have good experience painting skies, and you're going to know what to do, and you won't be kind of like trying to, in your mind, scramble around thinking, oh, how am I going to do this sky? You'll already have done a number of skies. You'll be familiar with the techniques of how to do it with your oil paints. And then, the rest is yours. We're going to do a lot of other work too with other type of things, like any kind of seascape style things with boats, ocean waves. We're going to cover that. We're going to cover landscapes, trees, rocks, mountains. We're going to do a lot of that stuff. But again, it's always good to kind of do them in like compositional styles first to get used to them. And then always save your compositions and keep them near you so that when you go to do a painting, you go, oh yeah, I did a whole bunch of skies. Let me go back and check out the ones we did, a couple like last year with Chris Petrie. And then you take out your canvas and you go, oh yeah, I remember and you'll snap right back to it and be like, oh yeah, we did this one. We did the light blue, cerulean blue with some white paint for clouds. Yeah, I can do that. That'll work in this painting if you're working on something. Or, oh, I'm doing a sunset scene. Yeah, that'll work. I remember we started out with the French ultramarine blue and then mixed the reds and the yellows and made the orange, and we made a sailboat in the, oh yeah, that'll work great. So you'll have all these great compositions kind of stacked in your studio, and then when you need to refer back to them, that's when you do refer back to them, you'll remember what you did in those paintings or compositions together, and then you'll be able to just use those same colors, methods, techniques. You'll be able to do all those things, use them for your future reference. So great to work with you. We'll see you on the next video, and happy painting, everybody. See you soon. Bye-bye.